Hello. I was accidentally scammed into reading published Star Wars reylo fanfiction called The Love Hypothesis in the year of our Lord 2021, because these are just the perils of living in our modern society. And boy, do I have some thoughts about this novel. So let's discuss. So you're probably wondering how I got here. The romance novel The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood has an average 4.5 star rating on Goodreads with over 100,000 reviews. The incredibly high Goodreads rating is the reason why I picked the book up in the first place. Along with the fact that I saw like 3 different booktubers rate the book 4 or 5 stars, without ever mentioning its origins, by the way. I personally found out that this book was a reylo fanfic when I was over halfway through the novel, and a friend sent a text into a group chat, and let me tell you, when I read that message, my brain just... After a few weeks, I cooled off enough to pick the book back up, and I decided to read it all the way from the beginning, just starting over from scratch now that I knew what it was. Because honestly, like a 4.5 star average Goodreads rating in this economy, like I had to see what was up. And folks, I was hustled, scammed, bamboozled, hoodwinked, and led astray by Goodreads, because let me tell you, of the 49 books that I have read so far this year, The Love Hypothesis officially has received my lowest star rating with 2.5 stars. And yes, I get that 2.5 stars isn't even that bad. I understand that I have had an exceptionally good reading year, but being the worst book I have read out of 49 books total, that's really saying something. And I definitely don't want people to be gaslit by Goodreads the way that I was. So let's get into the actual points I have written down. I have like a very, very rough outline. It's literally just bullet points written down on my laptop. And first up on the list is just something I've named the unprofessionalism of it all. So let me explain to you the premise of the love hypothesis. Olive, basically Rey, is a third-year female PhD student in the biology department at Stanford University. And Olive's bestie, An, has feelings for Olive's ex-boyfriend, but she doesn't want to break the girl code. So, Olive, instead of acting like the mature, smart woman in her mid-20s that you would have to be in order to be completing a PhD at a university like Stanford, and just, having an honest conversation with her best friend An about how it's totally okay for An to date her ex-boyfriend, there are no hard feelings, she's totally over this guy. No, instead of doing that, Olive decides to lie to her best friend and say that she's moved on and is actually dating somebody else. I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like a shitty friendship to me. You should not have to lie about things like this to your friends, because if you do, are they really friends? But either way, Olive lies about going out on a date, and then when An accidentally catches her at the lab when she's supposed to be out on a date, Olive, in a panic, grabs the person nearest to her, that would be Professor Kylo Ren, Adam, and makes out with them, and then ropes him into this whole fake dating scheme to convince An that she's moved on and it's okay to date her ex-boyfriend Jeremy. Now, Olive is a PhD student at the biology department at Stanford. Adam is a tenured professor in the biology department at Stanford. As a person who was very recently a student at a university and now actually works as a researcher at a university, let me tell you that this situation set off every single alarm bell in my head. In real life, if a faculty member were ever to date a student, they would be called out and investigated on so many different levels by the department, by the university, and the likely result would be that the faculty member would be fired for inappropriate conduct, especially at a major university like Stanford. And from what I'm given to understand, the author Ali Hazelwood is an actual professor now. So girl, what were you thinking? I sincerely hope that she knows that this is just a gross ethical no-no in real life, because she's an actual professor now. What? She tries to hand wave away the whole Olive and Adam dating by trying to point out that Adam isn't Olive's direct professor or dissertation advisor, but he's still a faculty member in the same biology department as Olive, which means that his colleagues actually are Olive's professors and research advisors. there are still huge conflicts of interest and power imbalances and just general ickiness about the entire situation. Like, I don't understand why you had to make Adam a tenured professor. I think the book would have been perfectly the same had he just been like a very talented postdoc. If you had to make him a professor, like, why did you make him a professor in the same department? Like, that's just, it's so gross. It's so gross. And I asked my stepdad, who is actually a tenured professor like Adam, and who also completed his own PhD at Stanford, just like Olive, about all of his thoughts on the premise of the novel. And his exact words were, and I quote, I have them written down here, "There's not a chance in hell this would happen at Stanford. This is extremely unprofessional." And honestly, like, the unprofessionalism of the situation as a whole is just made so much worse by the way that Olive behaves throughout the novel. The moment that absolutely got on my last nerve is when one of Olive's friends, Greg, who has Adam on his dissertation committee, Greg gets his like research proposal failed by Adam because, quite frankly, it's subpar science. Greg did not think his shit through. So Greg decides to take his frustration with Adam failing his proposal out on Olive because Olive is Adam's girlfriend. And Olive decides that she's gonna get mad at Adam? You know how like sometimes like a husband will cheat on a wife with some random other woman and then the wife gets really, really mad at the random other woman instead of the husband who is the one who actually broke his marriage vows? Like, that's basically Olive. Girl, what? Greg is the asshole here. He misplaced his anger on you, and instead of you calling him out, you're instead going to misplace your own frustration on Adam and have the audacity to tell this man how to do his literal job? Like, hello? Like, she literally texts Adam, "Hey, did you fail Greg?" And Adam responds by saying that no, he didn't fail Greg as a person, he failed Greg's proposal. But he didn't just like do it out of spite. He explained carefully all of the weaknesses in Greg's proposal and said that he would approve it after Greg makes revisions, which FYI is literally just how academia works. For everyone on every level, by the way, because all of academia is peer reviewed. You're constantly getting feedback from other people and being told to revise stuff. It is just par for the course. And actually, Adam literally points this out by saying, and I highlighted this part of the book, Adam texts, and this is an exact quote from the book, "It's not my job to manage your friend's emotions. He's in a PhD program, not grade school. He'll be inundated by feedback he doesn't like for the rest of his life if he pursues academia. How he chooses to deal with it is his own business. We, like the committee, we are giving him feedback that will allow him to produce useful knowledge. He is a scientist in training. He should value guidance, not be upset by it." And then, in response, Olive really childishly calls Adam antagonistic and unapproachable, when honestly, like, we have seen zero evidence of him being this way. The cardinal rule of writing is show, don't tell, and Ali Hazelwood has not shown us Adam being anything vaguely like antagonistic or unapproachable. We have only ever seen him being genuinely nice to Olive. And in fact, even in this conversation itself, Adam doesn't react antagonistically to Olive. He doesn't get upset that she's literally insulted him to his face. In fact, what he does is he very, very calmly responds with, and once again, I'm reading directly from the text, "I'm doing my job, Olive, which is not to deliver feedback in a pleasant way or to make the department grads feel good about themselves. My job is to form rigorous researchers who won't publish useless or harmful crap that will set back our field. I couldn't care less about how your friends perceive me as long as their work is up to standard. If they want to drop out when told that it's not, instead of, like improving their work, then so be it. Not everyone has what it takes to be a scientist, and those who don't should be weeded out." I would like to remind everyone that this is at Stanford University, which is not only one of the best universities in the United States, it is arguably one of the best academic institutions in the world. So yeah, like this conversation about standards, it's 100% appropriate for a place like Stanford. Because at Stanford University, like you're working with the brightest minds at the cutting edge of research. And so like you need to make sure you're not doing bad science. When you have fought really hard to get into the same room as some of the best and brightest people in the world, you then don't get to ask those people to lower their standards for you. Like you're the one who fought to be there, right? You're the one who fought really hard to get admitted to Stanford to work with Adam Carlson, this like famed professor who's like the wonderkind of biology. He got to where he is by having the high standards that he does. Why would you expect him to lower his standards for you and make you a shittier researcher? Adam's response like 100% makes sense to me. And to make sure I wasn't crazy, I showed my friends and actually like a bunch of my peers in academia this entire exchange, and all of their responses were, Adam is making 100% sense in this scenario by very calmly laying out his literal job description and explaining that constructive and critical feedback is how science works. When you come up with an idea, it has to be very rigorously tested out and critiqued by everyone else before you just get to like send it out into the world as a fact. Everyone agreed that Greg is 100% the asshole for making Olive feel bad about Adam just doing his actual job. But that response that me and all of my like friends and peers had, is that Olive's response? Nope. Her response is to suddenly start imagining that Adam is rejecting her work and her research, despite the fact that she just like tries so hard on it, which, okay, first of all, Olive, sweetie, like maybe you need to listen to Coldplay's Fix You a couple more times to understand the very real adult message that sometimes, even when you try your best, you don't succeed. And that is just life. Your level of effort, honestly, like does not mean much about whether or not something is successful or not successful in terms of science. You can try really, really hard, but if the math's not mathing, you can't make an untrue thing true. Not me saying this in our post-truth society when people don't even accept basic fact, but like, I'm talking to rational people who like think science is a valid thing. And more importantly, it's like, Olive, why are you making Adam's professional academic critique of Greg's research proposal about your own personality and life history, Olive? Once again, we circle right back to the main issue at hand, which is Olive's complete inability to separate the personal from the professional. Olive's response to Adam very calmly and carefully explaining his job and literally just how academia works, which, Olive, you're a third-year PhD student, like you should know this by now. What? Olive's response is, well, fuck you, Adam. What? Every single person I ran this scenario past was like, Olive is way out of line. She really took her own shit out on Adam and then like didn't even immediately apologize after she instantly regretted it. Honestly, this whole thing is so foul because I cannot believe that Ali Hazelwood put me in a position where I, vice president of the Kylo Ren hater squad, am suddenly finding myself agreeing with and supporting Kylo Ren. Because he is honestly, and I cannot believe I am saying this, frequently the person with the most sense and rationality in this entire stupid novel. So many times while reading, I was forced to agree with Kylo freaking Ren's take on things, and oh my god, I hate it here. Somebody please get me out of the upside down. The last thing I have to say in this extremely long section before I move on is that, like, it's not just Olive who's immature and ridiculous. Her best friend An is too. An repeatedly pushes Olive into public displays of affection with Adam at the actual university. Like pushing Olive to sit on Adam's lap or slather on a bunch of extra sunscreen on him or even just like make out with him in public. And it's like, I don't even know how to explain how inappropriate that is in a place that is functionally a workplace. Like, An, girl, you're a freaking PhD student in your mid to late 20s, not a high schooler, like, double dog daring your best friend to kiss her crush after homeroom. It's already like a huge and kind of gross deal that there's like a professor dating a student. Like, why are you going around making things more awkward? Also, An, your gossipy ass is the reason why we're in this fake dating scenario in the first place, because you just like would not shut up and spread the information that Olive was apparently dating Adam like all over the department. So honestly, An is kind of a shitty friend. But then again, Olive is also a shitty friend who lies to An directly after An says, you can trust me, you know I've got your back. So like everyone sucks here. And it's honestly kind of yikes to have like the two primary women in STEM in your book consistently behave in such a childish and embarrassing and unprofessional manner. Like, this is not the representation that you think it is, Ali Hazelwood. Okay, the next bullet point on my list is just called characterization more inconsistent and flimsy than my sanity. So before I lose my mind entirely, I just briefly want to talk about fan fiction and how it relates to characterization. If you were to ask someone what the function of well-written and good characterization is in a romance novel, they'd probably say something like to make the audience get to know and like the main characters and then actually want to root for them. That's why characterization matters. The thing is, with fanfiction, the readers are, like, by their very nature as fans seeking out additional works, people who already know about, like, and care about the main characters. The canonical text has already done the heavy lifting of like establishing the characters and their personalities, and so the fanfic author can afford to focus more on like plot or comedy or writing and less on characterization. Unfortunately, when you then take that fanfic and you remove all the canonical references to sell it as a standalone book, kind of like, oh, I don't know, Ali Hazelwood did with the Love Hypothesis, it then falls on the author to make sure that they really like beef up the characterization in their standalone novel, because they've basically taken away all of the associations with the original work, right? I don't think it's a coincidence that I thought that the characters in the Love Hypothesis made much more sense and were much easier to sort of understand once I found out that this novel was reylo Star Wars fanfiction. Because I suddenly understood who everyone was supposed to be and therefore what their personalities were supposed to be like, right? I think the primary example of this is Adam, aka Kylo Ren. We, the audience, are repeatedly told that Adam is an ass, and yet we are never actually shown evidence that Adam is an ass. The closest we get is like that whole like failing Greg's proposal situation, and even then, like, we don't actually get to see Adam in action, right? It would have been different if we actually saw Adam make like an unnecessarily like mean remark or comment while giving feedback to Greg. Maybe we'd have been like, okay, that's harsh, you're kind of an asshole, that was unnecessary, but we don't get to see any of that. We, the audience, only get to see Adam's behavior during his text with Olive. And I think I've made it pretty clear in the previous section that the text conversations with Olive do not support a reading or even a vague interpretation of Adam being an asshole in this situation. Most rational adults would actually side with Adam, or at the very least be able to perfectly understand where he's coming from. And it's Olive who actually comes off looking bad in that situation when she just signs off with a very immature fuck you. Adam's characterization as this asshole who all of the students and the RAs are like extremely afraid of, it only really makes sense in the fanfic context, where you wouldn't know Adam as Adam, but instead as Kylo Ren. But the Love Hypothesis isn't a fanfic anymore. It's a standalone novel that needs to therefore be able to stand on its own two legs and show character traits to us instead of just telling them to us or assuming we know what's up already. And it just like doesn't do that very well. Everyone just feels kind of like flat and two-dimensional and like a bunch of different tropes kind of hastily thrown together. Half of Olive's personality is just eating junk food, which like honestly, it reminded me of that one iconic Curtis Connor video called I'm Not Like Other Girls, where he discusses the trend of a bunch of girls declaring that they're different and quirky and special and unique and not like the other girls because, wait for it, they like to eat chicken McNuggets and hamburgers. And Curtis had to gently be like, hi, eating food is not a personality trait, nor is it even a particularly unique thing to do or enjoy doing. And that is honestly exactly how I felt reading this novel, because in my personal opinion, Olive has the exact same energy as those I'm quirky and different girlies, especially once you factor in how her personality becomes increasingly ditzier and more oblivious as the book progresses. And honestly, the number of junk food references, combined with the fact that Olive is repeatedly described as being so thin that her like ribs and hip bone jut out and that her stomach is concave, it just started really grating on my nerves because, like, what are we doing here? It is 2021. I'm just so tired of the trope that's like, oh, here's a hot, skinny woman who eats a lot of junk food to show that she's a real person and not a fake bimbo. Like, What are we doing here? Did we learn nothing from the cool girl monologue in Gone Girl about the way in which society places unrealistic and insane expectations on actual women as well as female characters to be eating nothing but hot dogs and Doritos and cold ass pizza while still remaining a size 0 to 2? I'm gonna say this one more time just to be really clear. Being a thin woman who likes to eat junk food is not a substitute for having a personality, Ali Hazelwood. I need you to give me some actual solid characterization. Beyond that, one of the most annoying aspects about Olive, and honestly, like, I cannot believe I'm roasting her this hard because I'm one of the people who, while everyone was like, oh, Rey's such a Mary Sue, Rey's such a Mary Sue, like, I actually like Rey. Rey is like one of my favorite characters in the entire Star Wars universe. I love her to bits and pieces. I loved her character arc in The Last Jedi. I haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker yet, so I'm really hope they like don't do her dirty. I'm planning on watching it this weekend now that I've like finished reading this book. Just saw The Rise of Skywalker and it was the worst. So this Thanksgiving, I'd like to say thank you to the universe for not letting me spend money on that movie ticket when The Rise of Skywalker first came out. Because, God, I would have been so mad. I'm probably going to film another rant review of the Skywalker once I've collected my thoughts because... But anyway, the most annoying thing about Olive was her complete and total obliviousness about Adam's romantic feelings towards her, because it was just such a blatant example of terrible and inconsistent characterization. The premise of the entire novel is that Olive is perceptive and emotionally intelligent enough to recognize when two people, Jeremy and An, feel attracted to each other but are trying to hide it. That level of awareness of people's emotions around her is the reason why she comes up with this convoluted fake dating scheme in the first place. And yet, when it comes to Adam, who is basically holding up a neon sign the entire second half of the novel about how much he likes Olive romantically, Olive is suddenly a ditzy and oblivious little baby. Make it make sense. It's so obvious that the author twisted characterization to suit like the plot that she wanted to tell in her head, instead of actually creating characters with specific personality traits and tendencies and genuine desires, and then making sure that the plot and all of the decisions that they made flowed logically from that characterization, right? Like, it would have been so much more interesting to have Olive maybe actually notice that Adam is interested in her, but to still not be willing to enter into a relationship with him for whatever reasons that seem logical for her character traits and her personality. Instead of being portrayed as somebody who is super perceptive and aware and considerate of other people's feelings, especially as they relate to like romantic attraction towards the start of the novel, and then just like losing that personality trait as she moves on through the novel because that's convenient to the plot and whatever misunderstandings Ali Hazelwood wants to take place. Like, it's just whatever. I've spent way too long talking about shitty characters here. Let me move on. The last negative bullet point that I have here is just called, I know this book takes place in the biology department, but where is the chemistry? And this bullet point basically just exists for me to get demonetized because I don't know how I am supposed to convey to you that every single steamy scene in this entire novel gave me a really weird, awkward, and terrible vibe. I want to point out here that if you like somehow enjoyed these scenes or whatever, that's on you. But to me personally, I was very weirded and honestly kind of icked out. And I apologize in advance for what I'm about to tell y'all, but if I had to suffer, so do you. Like, first off, the moment I read the line, and I have it highlighted here, he could fit her entire breast into his mouth. All of it. I died laughing. I couldn't take anything else that happened after seriously because the whole time I was just laughing inside my head, thinking of that one meme with Kirby and the watermelon. Like, the whole titty? Really? How big is his mouth? How small is her boob? None of it made sense. And I was just thinking about Kirby and the vibe was fully ruined. All the descriptions of like what a skinny legend Olive was also felt really kind of like jarring and out of place and really took me out of the moment. As well as honestly like the entire like hyper fixation on Adam and how big and tall and broad he was and how chiseled his body is or whatever, which I suppose this is as good time as any to bring up the fact that Kylo Ren, the Star Wars character, is played by the actor Adam Driver. So calling your revamped fanfic main character Adam, yikes. It kind of gives like author self-insert fanfic vibes. And like when I'm reading a novel that's not supposed to be about real life people, I don't want to be suddenly hyper aware of the fact that the author kind of wants Adam Driver to like rail her. I'm so sorry, that was crass, but that's honestly the vibe that you get off of this book, and I hate it. There's also the whole thing about protection or lack thereof, which is just so wildly wrong and jarring to have come from like two biologists who should have some basic understanding of like how disease and pregnancy work. And there's also so much grossness in the discussion of bodily fluids. Oh, and the implication that like Rey didn't like use the bathroom or clean up after she and Adam got it on, which like, bestie, I hate to tell you this, but that's how you get a UTI. I just like, no words. Hi, hello, editing Prachi. I may not have the words, but you want to know who does? Jess Owens. She has many words. All of them are very, very hilarious, and she is somehow able to, in her rant review that I just watched, she just uploaded it yesterday, and I finally got around to watching it, and every single thing that she says about the steamy scenes, spot on. Spot on. She put it into words. I don't know how. She put it into words. She really just captured every single gross, terrible thing I felt while reading. And honestly, she did it in a way funnier way than I ever would be able to. So everyone, please go watch her review if you haven't already. And also know that I like hard agree with pretty much all of her other points. So now, back to video me losing her mind. Everything was awkward and terrible and gave a really weird vibe, and I'm sorry I had to subject you all to that. Okay, the final point I have is let me actually discuss some good things about this novel. I know I just roasted the hell out of it I have been recording for 59 minutes now, so it's been a full hour of roasting. Let me actually say some good things. I did laugh a bunch, sometimes not at the appropriate spots, like the whole Kirby watermelon titty thing, but also sometimes at moments when I knew Ali Hazelwood was genuinely trying to be comedic and funny. I also think that Ali Hazelwood is at her absolute best when she's writing about science and the student aspect of academia, aside from that like whole gross professor-student relationship. She really like captures the essence of that experience. And looping back around to the science writing for a bit, like I think she would actually be a really, really good science communicator because she explained a lot of things very, very well and effectively throughout the novel. And then the last sort of good thing I want to say is that if you, like me, the second time I attempted to read the novel, right, like my full reread starting from the beginning after I realized it was a reylo fanfic, I think if you do what I did then, which is you sit down to read the book in one sitting, just like binge read it, and you turn your brain all the way off, I think you will have probably like a pretty fun time. I know I did. Before I really thought about the novel, I was willing to give it like 3 stars, maybe even like a 3.5, because I was just kind of like swept up in the giddiness of it all by reading it all in one go. But the moment my like 2 brain cells had to activate in order for me to begin formulating thoughts for my like November reading wrap up, the whole thing fell apart like a house of cards. And now here we are, with this being hands down the worst book I read in 2021. So I guess the moral of the story is don't think. No thoughts, head empty. That's the best way to be. That doesn't seem like a great moral for a book that is ostensibly about science, but here we are. Here we are. If you read this book and liked it, please tell me why down below, because I personally always like to rethink and revise my opinions once I come in contact with new information. If you hated this novel and you need a place to vent down below because everybody else seems to be raving about it and giving it 4.5 stars, the comments are a safe space for you. Please leave all your roasts down below. And if you have recommendations for good romance novels, please, I am begging you, leave them down below because I need to read something to cleanse my mind of the love hypothesis. So that's all from me. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be safe out there, lads. Bye.